We could all begin to find our seats. Meeting of the Transit and Bus Committee is called to order. Are there any public speakers?
Yes, we have one, William Henderson from the Transit Riders Council.
Good morning. I wanted to briefly speak before you this morning to express our thanks to Carmen Bianco for his leadership of the Department of Subways and NYC Transit for the past 5 years. As there's no August board meetings, we want to take this opportunity to salute Carmen, unless anybody wants to come back for an August board meeting. There's an apocryphal saying translated from the Chinese, supposedly translated from the Chinese, that says, "May you live in interesting times." Whether or not that saying actually exists in Chinese, I think we can agree that you've had interesting times here at NYC Transit on your second time through. You've had snowstorms, a couple of major coastal storms. The coming of 6 million riders is a regular daily event on the subway system, and all the other events that can befall the system from time to time. And you've led your staff with candor, professionalism, skill, and at times humor. The riders appreciate that. And although the public opinion of your performance is only as good as the previous day's commute, there's a lot more positive than negative in the work that you've done here. The thing that I most appreciate about your time here is that you understand in the end, NYC Transit is about moving people rather than moving equipment. And that's clear in your emphasis on the rider experience. We thank you for your emphasis on maintaining evenly spaced service, even if that makes on-time performance look much worse. I think it's no coincidence that many of the leaders of NYC Transit have spent some time in system safety, because those are the folks that understand that it's all about people and it's not necessarily about technology and equipment. In closing, we want to wish you the best on your retirement. You leave NYC Transit as an organization that's stronger and more able to meet today's and tomorrow's challenges with a vision for the future. And that's all the riders can ask for. Thank you.
Thank you. With respect to the minutes of our last meeting, is there a motion to approve? Second? All in favor? I presume the minutes are approved. Are there any changes to the work plan?
No changes, thank you.
Then, before I ask President Bianco to take over the next part of the meeting, which talks about operations and includes his report, I wanted to say, and I don't presume to speak for the entire committee, although I am confident that they will each want to be heard on this. But rarely have I worked with a public servant of Carmen Bianco's caliber and dedication. For those of us who ride every day, you can see it, especially at a time when it was pointed out by our public speaker. We had a few not insignificant storms and other calamities befalling our system, especially the onset of a good problem. More people using our system than ever before. You can see what a capacity problem does. And rising to that challenge, leading an army of men and women in New York City Transit to deal with that is a pretty extraordinary thing. It's got to be acknowledged, and there is some sadness in pointing out that this will be Carmen Bianco's last meeting with us. I am sure that his third act will be as interesting, I hope, as his second and first, but we will. I think we will remember, Carmen, your service to New York City Transit and to our riders extraordinarily well. And I don't think it's an overstatement to say people are measured by how well they're remembered, and you will be remembered well. So with that, President Bianco, the rest of the meeting is yours.
Mr. Chairman, may I
Mr.
please
Murtler.
add my voice to yours? I have had some 40 years of government service, part-time, full-time, and otherwise. Public service is rarely appreciated, especially when it is in the midst of a cauldron where you have the crises you have mentioned and some that have not been mentioned. And public servants are knocked generally rather than applauded. In the 40-odd years that I've been privileged to be at the peripheries and in the center of public service, I have never encountered a person who has great and has earned it, who has done a better job in what he has undertaken to do, and has at the same time been able to communicate to all and sundry that he is a gentleman first and last, and someone who is worthy of trust. He will be sorely missed. He has done a superb job.
Mr. Chairman,
Dr. Metzger.
I don't have 40 years here, but sometimes it seems like it. I've seen a number of people in your chair, and the thing I think you were very special in being able to do was no matter what kind of a crisis we were in, you always had time to explain to a board member how it worked, what was going on, what the resolution was going to be, and helping us to understand the decisions that we have to make when you're here with us. That was a wonderful asset, and it was incredibly helpful to everyone here. We're all going to miss you very much, but we wish you the best.
Mr. Capelli and then Mr. Albert.
Just incorporating my colleagues' comments, you have served elegantly with great distinction. I, as well as all of my colleagues, have appreciated your efforts on behalf of the citizens of this city, and I wish you much luck and health and happiness in the future, and thank you for your service to the people of New York City. Thank you.
Carmen, I don't know what I'm going to do without being able to call you up and say, what's happening on this line? Are you aware of this problem? Carmen has always been extremely accessible, knowledgeable, a real gentleman. It's hard to picture New York City Transit without him. I know that you want this next step in your life, and I wish you all the best. And I hope that the MTA can still call on you occasionally because you know so much about the system and how it works. Best of luck in everything you do.
Is there anyone else? Mr. Ballin, and then
I just
Commissioner
want to make
Trottenberg.
a brief thank you to Carmen. I wish you all the best of luck in the future, and thank you for your great service. I wish we had a resolution to vote on this one. All right. Best of luck, Carmen.
We will have a resolution by Wednesday. Carmen looks uncomfortable because he's such a modest man. I want to thank him as a board member, but also as New York City DOT Commissioner, because we work together on a lot of things just day to day, and I think I'll just echo what my colleagues on the board say. What a pleasure he is to work with. What a knowledgeable, delightful man, and we're going to miss him tremendously in this city. He's given us wonderful service here. Thanks, Carmen.
Chief Fox wants to add something.
Thank you. Thank you. One of the things I enjoy most about my latter part of my career and my position is I get to watch and hopefully help leaders grow. So it's one of the favorite parts of my job. But it's such an inspiration to me to see all that a leader requires: compassion, caring, empathy, smart management in common. So I'm able to look for this in my developing commanding officers, but I get to see what it looks like working with Carmen. And there's one request I have for you. Please don't ask me to remove you from my email group.
I wouldn't know what to do in the morning if you did. Well, first of all, I'm not very good at this, so thank you all so much. It was, your comments are very kind. This was a difficult decision for me, because I truly fell in love with this job, and I truly fell in love with what we do every day. But in my personal case, I'm doing this because I really want to spend more time with my family. I mean, it's pure and it's simple. I started this job. I know I look very old, but I started this job and my baby was 2 years old, and my baby's now working on 9. So, you know, and I have a 10-year-old, and I know it's just a few years before that they'll still curl up under my arm or hold my hand before I become the dumb father, and so I want to make sure that I'm using that time the right way. So with that, and I also have to say my wife's joined me today. My wife Maureen's here, and she's been pretty incredible because this job is all-consuming, and you miss a lot on the weekends. You miss a lot of family things. So having a partner that comes through for me every single time and has just been 1,000% supportive is really terrific. Just real quickly, I also have to thank our chairman. Tom gave me an incredible opportunity, and not only to take on the role in Subways, but also to appoint me as president. And you know, my job was to not only do my job, but to do 50% of his, and I hope I've accomplished that. But I mean, it's, you know, I'm a person that started on the railroad back in 1977, and I started in about the lowest position you can. I was an entry-level worker out there on the tracks, and if someone would have told me that, you know, in my career, I would be the president of the largest mass transit agency in North America, I would have smiled and not believed it. So, you know, I'm just, you know, living a dream to be here and to be able to do this, and to think that I came from, you know, as a street kid. So for the street kid to be able to do well, I'm really happy, and it's again a testament to all the people that are around me that make it happen. I just want to thank you all too, because, you know, this has been a great experience with the board of directors that keeps us on our toes. You know, you have pushed us, you've made us behind the curtain. We spend a lot of time prepping for these meetings to make sure that we are dotting the I's and crossing the T's and really ready to answer any of your questions. And you make us do that, and I appreciate that. That helps us grow, and that helps us in our delivery of service. And I also, you know, I know I'm going on here. Maybe I'll cut it off here soon. But this isn't about me. You know, I was blessed here with the greatest leadership team that anybody could ever ask for, and they just make my job incredibly easy. And so my leadership team and the 48,000 people that make up the entire transit team, they're the heroes. I mean, they make this happen day in and day out, and I'm just honored to be part of that team. So. And it's just wonderful to watch an organization that is, you know, mass transit in other cities isn't like mass transit in New York City. And here we're really the centerpiece of everything that goes on. We're the crown jewel, if you will, of the city of New York. And it's just so wonderful to know that so many people count on us, and that we have a team here that really worries about delivering that back to them. So. With all of that, I'll miss this job. It was exciting, but I do want to take 30 seconds to acknowledge someone else in the room, because I'd be remiss. That individual, you're all sitting here talking about me, but we have somebody in our company, Fred Smith. This is also Fred's last meeting, and Fred is our chief engineer, and he's been on this. He's been with the MTA for 35 years, serving in 2 different agencies. I think 20 of those years has been with transit. He has been here through many, many challenges, the latest of which is trying to navigate through a $14 billion capital program, or $12 billion capital program, and also the $4 billion in work that Sandy has created, and Fred has done that as an incredible member of the team, and I am proud to be able to work side by side with you. But if I were to say something about Fred, it's really his humanitarian skills that get me more than anything. This guy is just out for other people and always making sure that everybody else is taken care of before himself. And I'm a real believer in the New York City blood bank, if you will, because it just helps so many people. And they say for every pint of blood that you donate, 3 lives are saved. Fred is one of our gallineers. He's donated over 100 pints of blood since he's been here. So that just goes to show you the kind of guy that we're dealing with here. And Fred, I'll miss you too. And I'll miss all of you on the team. So thank you all very much. Well, we can get to work now, huh? Okay. Do you want me to turn it over to Joe?
Joe Leader,
All right, good
operations
morning.
report.
As we have discussed at our last two TA committee meetings, we have been targeting efforts on the 6 to 7 and the F lines to improve service and weight assessment on these lines. The line-by-line weight assessment data we report in the TA committee book represents the 12-month moving average, so it will be some time before our efforts are visible in those statistics. I am, however, pleased to report that our preliminary data shows improvement on these lines. Okay. In regards to the 6th line, when we last spoke, our key initiatives surrounded placement of platform controllers at key stations, installation of step-aside boxes, and effective deployment of MLW personnel along the Lexington Avenue corridor. We are focusing our efforts on decreasing dwell times and improving response time to incidents along the right-of-way. Our preliminary figures show that weight assessment on the 6th line improved in May and June of this year as compared to April and March of this year, and that AM dwell times are improving. We are continuing to hire and roll out additional platform control staff and have installed wireless mics for platform staff at 51st Street and 121st Street. We are also making similar announcements at Grand Central Terminal using an older system, which we are looking to upgrade into a wireless system. Since our last meeting, we have completed the installation of step-aside boxes on the southbound platform at 51st Street. We will continue on the northbound platform at 51st Street, and once that's completed, we'll start at 59th Street. In regards to the 7 line, we are focusing our efforts to reduce incidents and speed our response to incidents along the right-of-way. Signal and track incidents have improved 31% and 29% respectively for the months of May and June. We have installed 28 250-foot third rail heaters at Queensboro Plaza, 33rd Rawson, 52nd Street, 61st Street, and the track section south of Main Street to reduce the impact of ice and snow on the 7 line. And as you recall earlier this winter, we had an incident where we lost the number 7 line for almost all day due to a very freak ice storm that hit us. And what my staff has looked at is all grades, positive grades of 2% or more, and began installing third rail heaters in those locations. And we're pretty much done on the Flushing line at this time. Our preliminary data shows that our efforts to add and strategically place track, signal, and third rail teams are effectively reducing response times as well on the number 7 line. And finally, our third targeted line is the F line. On the F line, we have been focusing our efforts on reducing our response to incidents. We have enhanced visual and ultrasonic inspections, added incident response teams, and are aggressively installing continuous welded rail, or CWR, along the Queens Boulevard corridor. I'm happy to report that we have seen a 38% improvement in track incidents on the F line for the month of May and June. Similar to the 7 line effort, our preliminary data shows that our efforts to add and strategically place track and signal third rail teams are effectively reducing response times. And this year we have installed close to 11,000 CWR rail feet on the Queens Boulevard line. This concludes my update on the 3 targeted lines, but before I conclude my operating report, I would like to mention that the May MDBF was 161,720 miles, the highest monthly average of our fleet since October of 2013. And the 12-month average ending in May was 144,395 miles, the highest 12-month average since January of 2014. A particular note is the fact that our R46 fleet, approximately 40 years old, achieved a May MDBF of over 235,000 miles. This strong performance of our fleet is a reflection of our tremendous expertise and dedication within our maintenance and our engineering ranks. And at this time, that concludes my report.
If I may, before we move on to Darrell, there's always lots of questions about our signaling system and you know, particularly the portion of the system that goes back to the 1930s. And that certainly creates some of the challenges that you see when we talk about delays. We have a video clip here which I'd like to share with you that talks about the complexity of the current signal system, but also looks at the enhancements of what communication-based signaling will bring to us and why it's so important that we keep moving in that direction. I'd like to play this because you'll really see that, you know, the increase in capacity that it gives us, the improvements in safety that it gives us, are so critical to the future of providing transportation here. So why don't we go ahead and roll the film if we can? Please.
It's supposed to have sound.
We're missing the sound. Here's what I suggest. Why don't you all go ahead and keep working at it, allow us to move the meeting along? Is that fair? Yeah? Okay. So with that, why don't we turn to Darrell, give us the bus operations report?
Good morning. MDBF in the month of May was 4,708 miles, a decrease of 6.5% from last month, but an increase of 7.6% from May of last year. We continue to work hard to mitigate the impacts of operating a fleet more 1,000 buses that are 15 years or older. Therefore, I would like to provide you with an update of the current bus purchase program. Deliveries from our 300 express bus contract with Prevost are on schedule, with 101 buses delivered and in service. Prevost's sister company, Nova, began the delivery of 414 standard local service buses the week ending July 10th. At the same time, we have received 220 of the 348 standard buses on order from our contract with New Flyer ahead of schedule. In addition, the federally funded MTA Bus Company procurements of 45 standard diesel buses and 75 articulated buses awarded at the end of December remain on schedule. 13 of the 45 standard 40-foot buses ordered from New Flyer have been delivered, as well as the pilot bus from the order of the 75 articulated buses. Finally, included in this month's procurement section, we are requesting the board's approval to issue a competitive RFP for 138 low-floor 40-foot compressed natural gas buses to replace 2003, 2004 vintage CNG buses that are approaching the end of their useful life. These buses are equipped with CNG cylinders that are required by federal law to be taken out of service between 2017 and 2018. It is intended that the local funding for this procurement will be made available through the 2015 through 19 capital program when approved, or through the identification of an alternative funding source if necessary. I would also like to say, Carmen, on behalf of the Department of Buses, that we thank you for your leadership. You've been extremely supportive, and we wish you Godspeed in the next chapter of your career and life. Thank you, and that concludes our report.
The operation, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Merdler.
Mr. Chairman,
people know that the system is old, but I don't think they realize just how old it is. They see the beautiful old architecture in the stations and they think it's just historic, just like seeing artifacts in a museum somewhere. What our riders don't realize, though, is that in our system, it's not just the architecture that's 100 years old. It's a lot of the basic technology as well. The infrastructure is old.
That's a copy. 1001 Bravo. Did you get that as per control? You're going to be turned that second down, right?
At West 4th Street Tower, we're still doing things the old-fashioned way. It works, but it's an antiquated way to run a subway.
Second Avenue as
Ladies and gentlemen, there is a
by and large over
Brooklyn-bound local train at 23rd
But your cow should probably...
So here at the West 4th Street Tower, we have a 1930s interlocking machine and indication panel. While safe and reliable, it's an old one. Its role is to provide safe train movements through and around the West 4th Street area. The dispatcher follows the train movement. He enters information into call sheets, into what's called the iTrack system as well. The tower operator, by using these levers and manipulating these levers, are able to actually move the switches located on the tracks. They're able to operate the signals, allowing them to go to the full danger position or to what's known as the clear position, and allowing trains to move. Equally important, though, is train tracking and knowing where trains are and what service is being provided along the corridor. So all of that goes on here in the West 4th Street Tower. We're now located inside the relay room for the West 4th Street interlocking. This interlocking plant is upwards of 80 years old. Reliability is certainly becoming more and more of an issue with the age. It's very hard to maintain. In front of me here, actual electromechanical relays that in many respects are the original equipment. Some of it has been refurbished and replaced. However, it is still 1930s and before technology. This equipment is not supported at all by the railroad industry. We are fully self-sufficient and self-sustaining. We have a signal shop that can replace the parts. They rebuild these relays. And then when any modernization is going on, we try to make sure that we scavenge to retain the parts so that we can provide replacement for those that remain in service. And this is most important. The cabling that provides this connectivity between the interlocking machine and the relays, as well as the equipment in the field on the actual tracks, is the original cabling as well. A lot of this cable is cloth-covered cable, so there's a lot of risks. If there was any small fire, there's a lot of risk of us losing this entire interlocking machine because it would be so hard to contain the fire. Communications-Based Train Control, or CBTC, is a massive, multi-decade project to modernize the subway's traffic control system. When CBTC is implemented on a subway line becomes safer and more reliable. It uses less energy and it allows us to run more trains per hour and increase service. Thanks to the MTA Capital Program, we've implemented CBTC on the Canarsie line and are currently installing it on the Flushing line, which will be ready for service in 2017. After that will be the Queens Boulevard line,
To understand the benefits of CBTC, we need to talk, though, about traditional fixed block signaling. On a fixed block signaling system, the railroad is divided into blocks to keep trains a safe distance apart. Blocks are electrically distinct segments of the line and can vary in length depending on the speed limit and geometry of the segment. When a train is detected in any part of a block, that block is considered occupied. The signaling system thus keeps the train behind it at a safe distance by prohibiting movement into an occupied or buffer block. This safe distance is enforced by stop arms, which can activate the brakes of a train if it tries to move into one of these blocks. It's a very safe system, but there are many limitations. First, there's no precise location or speed control. We never really know where the train is, and we're limited in our ability to control the speed of the train. Not knowing exactly where a train is means we can't safely operate them more closely together, so we can't increase the number of trains when ridership warrants it. Secondly, the fixed block system is very complicated in terms of infrastructure. It takes a massive amount of wayside signals, cables, power, and other ancillary equipment to operate the system. Implementing CBTC solves all of these issues. CBTC uses a moving block system that is under centralized control. With CBTC, we continuously know every train's location, direction of travel, and speed. This precision allows trains to travel together more closely and with increased safety. Being able to reduce the space between trains means we can provide more trains per hour when ridership warrants it. The wayside infrastructure needed for CBTC is also much simpler. Less maintenance is required because there are fewer things that go wrong. Converting a line to CBTC is a massive undertaking. We have to retrofit both the train cars and the infrastructure of the line. The Canarsie Line CBTC project required all new trains and wayside infrastructure. It was a $1 billion project that took 7 years to complete. But now that it's implemented, we have the capacity to support the continued population growth along that line. The Flushing Line CBTC project is currently underway as well, with cars being retrofitted at Corona's shop and wayside upgrades taking place all up and down the line.
We are here at the Corona Maintenance Shop. This is the home for the R188 subway cars, which the CBTC equipment is installed on. We're inside the subway car. This is actually the operating cab of the subway car, where the train operator controls the train from. These panels were installed. They replaced the older panel with the controller for power and brake and a dual display. When the train is in service, you'll see various different colors on this screen. You'll see this as a dynamic display where the pointer will be following what the real train speed would be, and you also see some other indications as CBTC establishes those speed limits, what they are as well. So right now we're basically looking at undercar equipment for R188 subway car. And part of the CBTC equipment is this TIA, which is a transponder interrogator antenna. It detects or communicates with transponders that are mounted on the track and basically determines where the train is. So every time the train is moving and it goes over one of these transponders, it gives information. So now the system knows where the train is.
As you know, the Flushing Line is heavily ridden. We have a huge population, and the only time you can get any real work done, you have to have a shutdown. And these full shutdowns allow everybody to piggyback, whether it be the contractors or New York City Transit, to all maximize the areas that they can work in and get as much work they can done in that short amount of time span. How you doing? I'm Andy Lubrano. I'm the resident engineer on the Flushing Signal contract. And at the present, we're south of Main Street Station. What's going on here is there's a lot of work that's happening at the present time. We have power cable work. We have track department out here doing rails over a switch. We're wiring, we're grounding, installing conduits, we're testing. We're also doing stationing, where we know exactly where the transponders are being installed on the trackway. And we're going to have a few more shutdowns this year, and a lot of work is going to be performed in that time frame. So, you know, be patient with us, and we appreciate it.
When you think about it, It's amazing how a system that's over 100 years old can still operate 24/7 and carry so many people. But this didn't happen by accident. The subway was planned and built to keep New York growing for decades. And today, a century later, the city continues to grow, and we're working hard to keep New York moving with a system that grows with it. With CBTC, we're building for the future.
I hope that's helpful as background to see the old and where we're moving to. I thought it was a few minutes well worth it. So
Now that the operations report is really concluded, Mr. Merdler.
I have three things. Carmen, how much would it cost to fully upgrade the signaling system, the 80-year-old plus equipment that you're talking about, and the full installation of CBTC?
I'm gonna look at Fred for that answer because I don't have it off the top of my head. But it's not, before Fred gets into it. I mean, it's the complexity is, there's. You have to take the tracks out of service in order to do the work. We have to continue to move 6 million people a day. It's not only the piece that goes on the right-of-way itself, but it's also the car-borne components. There's a lot to this. So this plan Fred can talk about will take us years to move across our entire system, but the benefits are certainly worth it. Fred, do you have the overall dollar value?
So the magnitude is in the $15 to $20 billion range. But again, each year, other things come due. So when you talk about the entire signal program, it's a combination of the investment in CPTC, which is an overlay onto our existing system, and our constant upgrading and modernization of the system.
And if you had your druthers, could this be done over a phased period of, say, 3 to 5 years if you had the resources?
No, it could not. The problem is we have such a mass system of, it's really 19 different lines, and it's impossible to do it all at once. You couldn't continue to run trains and service and have enough diversions to do it, even if you had all those resources, which is why it's so important to continue on a aggressive pace and
So
each year accomplish.
Is the point that over a period of a number of years, there must be a steady commitment and infusion of funds if the subways in the city of New York are to remain safe, and if the subways in the city of New York are to continue to make it a city fit for people and for living? Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to go to a point with Mr. Eric. I think too many people, myself included, have commented in the past about buses bunching, and they jam up together and they can't get a ride for a period of time. I'd like to compliment Mr. Eric. He and his folk have recently conducted an experiment in the Community Board 8 number district in Bronx County in terms of how to deal with bus bunching and how to jump buses ahead and to avoid it. It has been successful. It shows that people think. It shows that people act. And I think it's time that he be complimented for it, and I thank you. Lastly, if I may, I am delighted to hear that you are going to expand CBTC at some point in the Queens area. I'd like to invite you to the borough of the Bronx.
We'll take you up on that at some point. Absolutely.
Mr. Capelli.
Well, first of all, the commercial that we've just seen is a welcome one in that it certainly illustrates the importance of our capital program for moving the system forward. And as the commercial pointed out, the system was designed to provide the means to continue to grow as the population grew. And we've gotten to a point now where we have 6 million people a day going into the New York City subway system. And that's, I believe that that's a floor, not a ceiling at this point. But what we need now, if there's a clearer message, is for the political leadership of this state to continue to grow, to understand that as a board, we can do some things that I describe as being on the margin to improve service and add an occasional line here or run an additional train. But until and unless we get upgraded signal systems, we are not going to be able to reduce the pain of our commuters. And we can do things like adding people on platform controllers to get the trains out of the station quicker, and we should do those things. But we're working on the margins, and until Albany understands that the money needs to be dedicated to enable us to continue to keep this a world-class system, we're really banging our heads on the wall. And so I thank you for the production of that video. I have a question that we were having a discussion. We're going to have a board discussion on this, I guess, on Wednesday, and I may bring some of it up at Finance today. But each of the agency presidents were asked in terms of if there was some additional money, where would you put it? And we had a very quick briefing on it for some of the individual members the other day. Are there many places that we can add subway lines, or subway, not lines, but subway service without the CBC now that would significantly change the overcrowding conditions that currently exist?
I believe it was a month or two ago, we actually presented to you and we showed line by line where there's still some remaining capacity, but by and large, most of the lines that where we're seeing the high ridership experience are at or very, very close to being near capacity. So the longer-term answer, and I'll let Peter jump in if he wants, but the longer-term answer is to certainly move towards communication-based signaling, because that will allow us to increase the number of trains we could put out there and capacity. We absolutely need the capital program funded, yes.
Mr. Albert.
Carmen, and Fred, one of the unspoken things in this video was that you need a certain vintage year of equipment that if you're going to install CBTC. I don't believe we would do an investment in some of the cars that we know are being replaced. So is there a general rule of thumb that you'll put CBTC in cars that have 20 years left on their life or 15 years left? I mean, obviously, you wouldn't put it on an R46 or an R32 now, so.
That's correct, and there's a whole strategy behind. It's not just the right-of-way components, but it's also the car component, and the fleet has to be capable of accepting that.
Is there a general rule that cars that are going to be retired and fill in the number of years, we wouldn't put the CBTC receptors on?
Correct.
How old would you say?
Oh, I don't know the exact age. Do you guys have the age? I mean, but I could tell you that as we look at the fleet strategy for the years to come, that fleet will come in capable of CBTC. So as we look at the R211s, which are part of the 15 to 19 plan, as we look at the 188s, all of that equipment will come in capable of CBTC.
Ready.
That's correct.
If not, Mr. Ballin.
No, I don't. That was a very good discussion, and thank you. I have a question before we get to the financial reports. Are we about to go to the financial reports? I'm looking for.
Next up is safety.
I don't see that, but good. All right, I'll wait.
I do. So, having mentioned safety, Cheryl Kennedy's report. Well, that's another department.
Okay. Safety results were as follows. With the exception of fires, all items discussed refer to rates. Subway customer accidents and injuries had a slight increase when comparing April 2015 with April 2014 and were relatively flat on a 12-month basis. Subway fires increased when comparing May 2015 with May 2014, mostly due to outdoor debris and tie fires, which were the result of a higher than normal temperatures and dry weather. All of the fires were low or average in severity. Bus collisions increased on a one-month basis when comparing May 2015 with May 2014, while bus collision injuries decreased more notably over the same period. On a 12-month basis, bus collisions remained relatively flat, and bus collision injuries decreased. Bus customer accidents and injuries decreased on a monthly basis. On a 12-month basis, bus customer accidents were flat and bus customer injuries decreased slightly. Employee lost time accidents decreased slightly on both a monthly and 12-month basis. This completes the safety report.
Thank you. Are there any questions on that? Mr. Merdler.
Ms. Kennedy, in the month of May, 861 delays were caused by fires. And in your excellent compilation of areas where they were caused, you indicated they were primarily debris fires that were as usual in the tracks. And what I'd like to get a handle on is the extent to which we have been able to do anything constructive in terms of minimizing the debris that people, and it's people who do it, that people throw on the subway tracks and throw on the platforms that give rise to these kind of fires. I have three obvious areas to ask about. One is, are we putting back the garbage cans on some of the platforms? I think we should. Two, are we doing anything to stop the distribution and sale of food, which then winds up fairly frequently on those subway tracks? And number three, have you gotten to the point yet where you're able to deploy additional vacuum facilities to suck up that material?
Let me start. I'll ask the team to jump in and add to what I'm going to say. In terms of the two vacuum trains that we have on the property today, both of those trains are beyond their life cycle, if you will. We have 3 trains on order, 3 brand new trains, and as you can imagine, the technology over the last 15 to 18 years has improved significantly. So we have very high expectations that once we start to see the new trains, and I guess we're about 2 years away from the first one arriving on the property. So that will be, that is something we're looking forward to. The agitation that it's able to create, the amount of waste that it's able to pick up, I think will show a marked improvement. We do, in addition to that, have a number of personnel that are assigned to work on the right-of-way, and their purpose is to go out there and clean in the stations, in the station envelope, and we have a plan that we try to stick to. Of course, if we have winter weather or a storm or a flood or a water main break, we sort of have to rededicate them to other areas. But we certainly try to do our best, our level best to handle as much as we can. Again, remember, every single day on this property, we remove about 40 tons of refuse per day. So it's a huge challenge for us to do this day in and day out. But we do need our riders' help. I mean, this is something that's real important, and that is to, if you're bringing things into the system, either take it with you or put it in the canisters and not on the tracks. That's what we would ask our customers to do, and that would be a huge help for us. In terms of the canisters, which I think was the first question you asked, We owe the board a report on where we are. It's not one size fits all. And what I mean by that, there are, as we said from the beginning, there may be stations where it makes sense to continue, to reinstall, if you will, and there are stations that are doing just fine. And we're actually seeing less debris at the platform level and less in the station itself. So it's not there's no cookie cutter to this, if you will. We're seeing good results in some places. So I don't want to make a statement like we should just put them all back in, because I don't think that's necessarily the right thing to do. But we really got to work on the behavioral issues, because that's the key to this, is to keep it from getting on the tracks.
Mr. Ballin.
That was a very good substantive answer. Thank you, as usual. But, and this will not impact you, I guess, but what I'm concerned about as you do this analysis and report that you just were discussing in response to Chuck's question, that you don't just put on the blinders, because, and this is where the bifurcation of responsibility comes in again, because if you're just measuring the litter downstairs, the stairwell and above stairs right by the near area is of direct relevance to the question of, do you need the canisters there or not? So I hope that as part of that study, it's not a blinders, well, it doesn't look like there's any down here, so it looks like it's working type of analysis.
I think you're absolutely right, and our job is to make this the best possible system for our customers, and we've got to look at the entire station envelope, not just what's on the platform or what's on the track bed, but the stairways and everything should be included in that. And I think you're absolutely right, and we've got to make judgments around, if this doesn't fit, we've got to do the right thing, and I don't think we're seeing that, though, across the board, where we just want to have a wholesale, let's reverse this. I don't know that that's necessarily the right thing to do.
If there's no one else, we're ready for Chief Fox and the crime report.
Thank you. Good morning. For the first half of 2015, total major felony crime was up 2.3% within our transit system compared to the same period 2014, a difference of 25 incidents, 1109 compared to 1084. This increase was led by an additional 31 robbery incidents, up 14%, 243 compared to 212, and 27 felony assaults, 126 versus 99. Year-to-date, we're averaging 6.1 major felonies per day, in line with the 6.0 per day average in the same period, 2014. And I want to point out that that's the lowest per day number in recorded history, with 2009 being our lowest, and then 2010, and it was right into 2011 that the electronics became the norm in our system, in our city. I want to take a moment to speak about sexually motivated offenses in our transit system. Most men don't know that this exists in transit systems throughout the country and the world, in closed places, similar closed places, but far too many women do. There have been 343 sex crimes in our subway system, with 24 more incidents than last year. The year prior, 343 compared to 319. That's consistent with what we average every year in the last number of years. With no reported rapes year to date, the bulk of these incidents are crimes such as sex abuse, forcible touching, public lewdness, and unlawful surveillance. Enforcement in this area is strong. In fact, the majority of our arrests in these cases result from officer observations. In 2014, for example, 57% of our total reported sex crimes resulted from an officer observing the crime and making the arrest. Of the total number of reported sex crimes in 2014, arrests were made in 64% of the cases. While the number of times an officer is able to intervene in these cases may seem high, it demonstrates a troubling fact that many sex offenses continue to go unreported, and our research has consistently shown this, and the results of our enforcement efforts reflect this as well. Meaning, if so many of these arrests are officer on the scene, It would indicate that if there wasn't a cop there, the report may not be made. So our main message to women in particular and to our riders is that we care, the criminal justice system cares, we devote a lot of effort and attention, and we're constantly reviewing our strategies. I'm pleased to report today that we have recently taken steps to renew our commitment to sex crimes. Beginning late last year, we took a fresh look at our approach, seeking ways to not only enhance the prosecution of such crimes, but encourage victims to come forward. We sought input from Hollabach organization, whose members are dedicated to reducing sexual assaults and harassment. We solicited the help of the MTA as well, and you have responded admirably with a campaign that brings awareness and encourages reporting. Additionally, we engage each of our district attorneys and research the best practices from other agencies that police metropolitan transit systems. These crimes take a serious emotional and physical toll on victims, the majority of whom are women, as I mentioned. Knowing this, we have been training more of our female officers to combat and respond to these crimes and adding them to our teams, which conduct dedicated plainclothes operations to apprehend sex offenders. Additionally, we have created a victim statement of allegation and supporting deposition, where we capture the details of the crime in the victim's own words right after we make the arrest, when necessary, the language they are most comfortable with. This document serves to best relay the personal impact of the crime and ultimately enhance the prosecution of the case by the DA's office. And the victim is then on her way, usually within 20 minutes rather than going into the district. We understand the importance of continually developing our own skills and awareness of the impact of sexually motivated crimes. We now conduct monthly training to increase our officers' awareness. Hollabach, the women's advocacy organization I mentioned, has partnered with us in this process. Hollabach's members assist us with training curriculum and presentations that help our officers understand the unique nature of these personal crimes and establish victims' trust. With those combined efforts, we hope that victims will feel more comfortable coming forward. Despite our strong recommendation that victims of sexual offenses report the crimes immediately so that they have the best opportunity, so we have the best opportunity to catch the offender and successfully prosecute the case, we also recognize the need to provide a means of reporting an incident anonymously. The MTA has developed with this as well, establishing an online, the MTA has helped us with this as well, establishing an online reporting feature on the MTA website last year. Reports are forwarded to us, and we use these, the anonymous reports to monitor patterns or trends. Of course, reports that contain sufficient information are referred for proper investigation. And I believe her title is Director of Email Communication, Priscilla Sullivan, has been wonderful in this process, working with our district COs and our executives. We're proud of the continued commitment to fight sexual violence and harassment in our subways. And in March of this year, we were afforded a chance to share our experiences and ongoing efforts with several international transit police counterparts during a meeting in London. This participation has been rewarding, and we have shared many initiatives and practices with other agencies. We continue to focus on these initiatives to better address this issue, and I thank you all for your attention today and welcome any suggestions and questions.
Thank you, Chief. First, Mr. Capelli, then Mr. Merdler.
Good morning, Chief.
Good morning.
With respect to the 324 some odd incidents that reported to date,
yes.
How many, in analyzing those numbers, how many of them are repeat offenders, and to what extent? I mean, is that number broken down?
It runs the gamut. We have some repeat offenders that we actually target. We've actually, our plainclothes teams have watched them, just spotting them in the system and watched them and caught them in the act. And then we have a number of first-timers. I can get a greater detail with those arrests to the board by email after.
Okay, and I would just again follow up with my concern about recidivists in the system, that when we see somebody, just like as when their job seems to be to go down and steal iPhones in the system, that we identify them and try to keep them out. Certainly in this situation, I would hope that the district attorneys would work with us to protect our women passengers to keep these people out of the system so that we don't have to wait until they abuse somebody else.
Exactly, and the key part of this message is to get more women to report these crimes, and bystander awareness to get people who may see these things happening. Sometimes the trains are so crowded that the woman, the victim, is not even sure that it's happening until after the encounter ends.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Merdler.
Mr. Chairman, Chief Fox and I have had an extensive communication about this subject for a while. His folks are doing a superb job in trying to deal with the problem and the increasing problem of sexual abuses, which, in my view, cannot be tolerated under any set of circumstances. But it's a three-legged stool. They can arrest, they can apprehend, they can caution, but only district attorneys can prosecute, and only the courts can act. But Commissioner Capelli and I, several years ago, were able to persuade the then chairman of the MTA, Joe Loda, that some effort ought to be made to coordinate between those three branches so that police officers' efforts are not gone to waste, and that recidivism is not accelerated. Unfortunately, nothing happened. And so let me make two suggestions, if I may. The City of New York has a very talented criminal justice coordinator, formerly on the staff of the governor and somebody with great ability. Seems to me that she ought to pull together the DAs, the law enforcement officers of the Transit Bureau, and the courts, and remind them they have a responsibility. Now, there is a precedent for that. For many, many years, the city of Rome and the Italian inhabitants of it had this wonderful reputation that women were not safe walking the street without getting a pinch here and there. And every guidebook in the nation made that point about Rome and about Italy. Finally, and indeed the courts didn't do a darn thing about it. In fact, in one Supreme Court decision, they said, that's part of our culture. The courts finally got their act together, and there was finally a joint effort between the police, the prosecutive entities, and the courts, and that problem has diminished. It hasn't gone away, but it has diminished. And my point here is we need to pull those three forces together, because it is intolerable to think that women at this day and age are subjected to that kind of treatment in our city under any set of circumstances. I believe it is a public responsibility, and I believe the City of New York, through its superb criminal justice coordinator, has that responsibility now, and I thank you.
Mr. Ballard.
I want to segue. I don't want to interrupt the discussion on the sexual crimes, but I'm segueing away from that. I think we're done with that, right? Okay. I don't want anyone coming. I'm trying to have a flow for you, Mr. Chairman. Chief Fox, thank you. And I know you have a lot of different issues to contend with, so I'm going to segue a little. I don't know if you were able to listen to the dialogue we had at the Metro North Committee. I assume you had other responsibilities. So, but in short, we had a discussion of the increased number of vagrants, particularly in Grand Central, but it had applicability to other parts of the system. And I asked, I raised it, and I asked a couple of follow-up questions. And so I guess I have two questions, but I wanted to refer you to that discussion. The first question is, have you, I assume you've noticed it and you're aware of the recent increase in the problem, but do you have any program ongoing or upgrading to deal with the problem, one. And two, the notion of where the jurisdiction ends is one I asked Chief Cohn, and I want to ask you, because, for example, the escalators that go from Grand Central down to the subway, just as an example, and not to focus on it too much, but that's a good question as to where the jurisdiction of one policing entity starts and then another stops. It also can be seen on the outskirts of Grand Central and other places throughout the system. Is there something we can do at the board level to either help you with the A, if there's an increased program, and B, help clarify where the jurisdictional boundaries are so that we don't have a situation where things fall through the cracks and there isn't appropriate enforcement to keep the quality of life at the high standard we've become used to, particularly as you look at the statistics, the wonderful job that's happened over the last 10, 15, 20 years.
If I may work backwards with number 2 first. The jurisdiction, where we may end, MTA may start, it's confusing until we get to know it. So our commanders and our cops are pretty good with it, and we have great communication with Chief Cohn and our other counterparts. But going back to our homeless issue, our 2 main partners in working with dealing with our homeless conditions are MTA and BRC, Bowery Residential Committee. Now, that's an organization with experts in placement and intervention. So what's happened since with this new administration is BRC, Commissioner Bratton, Deputy Commissioner Susan Herman was able to work with the mayor's office, and BRC increased their hiring by, I think, 4 times as many people. They went from about 15 to 16 counselors up to 63. They also have psychiatrists where they had 1 or 2 up to 12, so we could do mental health removal orders. And what we've done is we have a dedicated unit of 75 officers, our homeless outreach unit, and it's dedicated to working with homeless outreach and the conditions, and they cover a transit system. They report to me. It's a transit command, but they cover the street and the trains as well, is wherever the work is. So what we did with that unit is we've increased that unit. We've increased the numbers of counselors with BRC, and more times we go out, we deploy with these counselors, and we find that we have better results with getting members to take services. So our contacts with our homeless are up like 17%. This year we have 4,055 contacts compared to 3,400 last year. More of those contacts are with professional counselors and people who intervene. Our placements are up actually dramatically, and that's when we describe placements. We're talking about people who accept the services for, I believe it's 3 months or 6 months in a sustained period. So in fiscal year, this fiscal year, we've had 834 placements, successful placements, compared to 102 the year before. So it is a huge problem. It's multifaceted, but our part in that our main part is through our homeless outreach, and we've done a number of other things. We've done cross training where I don't want district officers, when they see a homeless condition, to think that's homeless outreach job. They'll get to that. So we're doing more operations with homeless outreach, BRC, and our regular patrol officers, meaning transit patrol officers. We have BRC as part of our training as far as techniques, as well as homeless outreach. All new supervisors, all new COs, all new lieutenants, our new officers from the academy are being trained in what to look, ways of addressing the condition more effectively. That's just some of the things we're doing. We're constantly taking a fresh look at this, and we like the direction of the units, collaborating with other agencies' success, but it is a huge challenge.
Do you need more resources? That was an extraordinary jump that you just mentioned.
The jump in placements?
The number of placements.
Yeah. That's a very good thing, by the way, because placements are people who are taking services. I want to make that clear. That's not, while the numbers of homeless is clearly increased in our city, but these placements is a huge increase. So we're adequately staffed with what we have, and like I had said, BRC, made huge increases in their staffing. They work with us a lot more.
What about other quality of life type of infringements? I note that although crime was up marginally, I guess 2% or something like that, which is not good, but I noticed the arrest number is like 20%, 21 down. I guess there seems, well, there doesn't seem to be, as a layman, much of a correlation between that, but what, maybe you could explain what's driving the 21% decrease in arrests so far this year?
I think the 21, are you looking at January through June summonses, 21%? Because our arrests for June.
Okay, total arrests down 14%, I'm sorry. Then TOS
the
arrests 12%, and summonses down 21%.
Right, so
The summonses, I assume, are the correlation with, well, I'd like you to explain that.
Summonses are tabs. So let's work backwards. June,
Thank you.
we have a decrease of 4% in arrests. The numbers are there. We have an increase, a 15% increase in TOS arrests, theft of services, and a 12% decrease in summonses. We say summonses, and a number of those are TOS, and there are others. So what we are asking our officers to do is to focus on conditions and quality of their engagements and their enforcement, and not quantity. And that's what this reflection, which is reflective of other bureaus throughout the city. For example, anecdotally, we hear more cases where you'll hear officers stopping somebody, engaging them for the activity, and giving back a code saying that they wanted to admonish the person. So there are times where that's absolutely appropriate, and there's times where it's not. So my COs and I watch this closely, and these numbers I'm very comfortable with.
Yeah, this is not an attempt on my part for a gotcha kind of thing.
No, I
I'm
know.
really trying to inquire.
No, it's these are indicators that we all see, and it's a good opportunity for me to explain what they mean.
No, and if you need resources to address any of these issues, that's, I think, where the board can come in, so.
Thank you.
That's the purpose of my
I know.
inquiry. Thank you.
And now I think we're ready for the finance report, and President Bianco will take that part of it.
Thank you. Preliminary May 2015 New York City Transit fare box revenue was $368.7 million. That's $2.3 million, or 0.6% above budget. Year-to-date revenue was $1.73 billion, $24.3 million, or 1.4% below budget, due mainly to multiple snowstorms and lower than normal temperatures, reducing ridership throughout the first quarter of the year. Preliminary May 2015 operating expenses were below budget by $21.6 million, or 4.1%, including labor expense underruns of $17.6 million, or 4.5%, largely due to the favorable timing of payroll expenses and favorable reimbursable overhead credits. Non-labor expenses were less than budget by $4 million, or 2.8%. Year-to-date operating expenses were below budget by $3.4 million, or 0.1%. Preliminary ridership, May 2015, New York City Transit ridership totaled 209.3 million, or 0.4% below budget. Year-to-date ridership was 2.9 million below budget. May 2015 average weekday ridership results compared to May 2014 were as follows. Subway ridership was 5.9 million. That's an increase of 1.5%. This was the highest weekday average in more than 45 years. And again, as we continue to look at the number of days where we're exceeding that 6 million mark, there were 4 days in May where subway ridership exceeded 6 million customers. New York City Transit local bus ridership was 2.2 million, a decrease of 2.7%. New York City Transit Express bus ridership was 42,000. That's a decrease of 5.3%. And Power Transit ridership was 29,000, an increase of 1.1%. An early look at preliminary June 2015 financial results. Farebox revenue was better than budget by 2.9 million, or 0.8%. And preliminary June 2015 operating expenses were 3 million, or 0.5% below budget.
The MTA Bus Finance Report, President Darrell Eric.
Okay. All right. May 2015 farebox revenue for MTA Bus was 17.8 million, or 0.3% greater than budget. MTA non-reimbursable expenses were $53.4 million in May, or $1.1 million, or 2.1% above budget. Ridership. May 2015 MTA bus ridership totaled 10.9 million, which was 0.3% below budget. However, on a 12-month rolling average, weekday bus ridership was 2.3% better than last year, and average weekend ridership was 1% better than the 12-month rolling average of last year. And this concludes the MTA bus finance and ridership reports.
Any questions or comments? If there are none, we are at our valedictory capital program report from Fred Smith. I'd like to add, I know President Bianco had said it at the outset, but serving with you has been an enormous pleasure, and we appreciate your public service and wish you well in your next act, whatever that act may be. So the capital program, Fred Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next act is actually retirement, retiring to retire. That's the way it's supposed to be. Okay, looking at capital program results, commitments during May totaled $51.2 million. In the station's program area, improvements including platform edge and mezzanine repairs at the Wilson Avenue and Atlantic Avenue stations on the Canarsie line, and ventilator and drainage repairs at the Sterling Street and Beverly Road stations on the Nostrand line, and Church Avenue on the Culver in Brooklyn. Just so for your information, that brings us up to a total of 90 stations that have some form of construction activity underway as we speak. In the Shops and Yards program, rail car washers are going to be refurbished at 3 of our yard locations in the Bronx, including 239th Street, Concourse, and Pelham, which serves most of the IRT fleet. In the track program, mainline track work is beginning on the elevated Jerome line in Bronx, and switch work will begin on the Broadway 7th Avenue in Manhattan. Meanwhile, completions for the month of May totaled $28.3 million. That included in the signal program some modification work of control lines that's being performed by in-house work. That's the 5th of 6 phases continuing. And the replacement of 2 escalators at Roosevelt Avenue Station on the Queens Boulevard line. Going forward in the 15 to 19 program, just for your information, there is an extensive amount of escalator replacement work that's planned. Total of 35. That completes my report, Mr. Chairman, and it's been a pleasure serving you. I've had the opportunity to appear here before the board over the course of the last 20 years in my capacity as chief engineer at the Long Island Railroad and chief engineer at New York City Transit, and it has been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fred. It was so well done, there are no questions, and we're ready for procurements and Steve Plachocki.
And there won't be any questions there either, so.
Good morning. The procurement package, which presents New York City Transit, MTA Bus Company, and MTA Capital Construction procurements, includes 15 actions totaling $276.9 million in expenditures. I would like to highlight 2 procurements included in this month's agenda. Both procurements are for communication-based train control systems known as CBTC. The CBTC system is state-of-the-art technology that will allow us to achieve an increased level of safety through enhanced train control, shorter headways between trains, along with improved and more reliable service. For both actions, the board had previously approved New York City Transit's use of the request for proposal process in order to negotiate technical solutions and costs with prospective providers. The first procurement item to be highlighted consists of 2 contract awards, one to Siemens Industry Incorporated and the other to Thales Transport and Security Incorporated, in the total combined award amount of $205.8 million. These contract awards will bring CBTC to a portion of the Queens Boulevard line, one of the busiest lines in the transit system that is served by the E, F, M, and R lines. This is the first project that will test the interoperability and integration of the 2 qualified CBTC suppliers' distinct CBTC systems in revenue service. Since it is necessary that both Siemens and Thales perform a portion of the work to achieve interoperability objective, the contract is divided between the 2 suppliers based on pricing offered by both competitors in their best and final offers. Siemens will provide most of the equipment for both car-borne and wayside systems and the entire automated train supervision system at a cost of approximately $156.2 million. and Talos will provide the lesser portion of the Carborne and Wayside systems at a cost of approximately $49.6 million. New York City Transit Forces will install the production equipment on the cars, and a separate contract will be competitively bid to install the Wayside equipment. Both of these installation efforts are projected to be funded by the planned 2015 to 2019 capital plan. The second CBTC item being highlighted is for the award of a contract to qualify a third CBTC supplier. The award is being made to Mitsubishi Electric Power Products Incorporated in the amount of $1.2 million and underscores Transit's ongoing commitment to developing additional competition for the critical products we purchase. The intent of this contract is to qualify and develop one additional CBTC supplier in addition to Siemens and Thales, which are Transit's currently approved CBTC suppliers. The project involves the development and testing of CBTC software and systems from an additional provider for which we are paying a stipend to offset a portion of the development costs. New York City Transit received 3 proposals in response to a solicitation and conducted negotiations with 2 of the proposers that were determined to be the most technically capable. The selection committee unanimously selected Mitsubishi as offering the best overall value with a stipend of $1.2 million. Both of the CBTC procurements included in this month's package represent a key part of New York City Transit's strategy to expand capacity to address increased ridership and develop additional competition for future CBTC projects. I ask for your approval of all actions in the agenda.
Thank you. Is there a motion and second to approve the procurement package and move it to the board? All in favor? No, any questions?
Yeah, just a quick question.
I'm sorry.
Steve, the crane contract? Yeah. That's a brand new contract? We didn't have a renewal. Do we have cranes on site now all over the yards?
Yes, this is a renewal contract.
So it's a renewal contract?
Yes.
And is it the same guy? I mean, I'm just...
Yes, it's the incumbent that actually won a competitive solicitation on this.
And competition is very light in this area.
Yes, it's not for lack of outreach.
Right.
We actually attempt to highlight in the third paragraph.
Yeah,
we had an extensive outreach to the marketplace. We reached out to 33 companies. 4 companies actually attended the pre-bid.
Right, you only got 2 back. Yeah, I read that.
So I mean, the issue is that we require quite a number and variety of very large cranes to be deployed on the property, and there's not many companies that have that bandwidth to be able to not only provide those types of cranes, but also in the time frame that we require it.
Given the slim supply, I mean, did the rates go up tremendously over the last 5-year contract we had with them?
No, actually, the competition, as you know, is a good thing here, and the increase represents about a 0.59% increase over the price last time. So it's very competitive, yeah.
Alan, and then Mr. Albert.
My question goes to the Siemens Thales. I just want to make sure I read it right. So it started at 306, 307, which was 68% higher, and you were successfully able to negotiate them down about $100 million
Correct.
through your negotiations. I want to make sure the numbers are right.
That's absolutely
I
right.
want to thank you. That's a tremendous effort. Is there any reason why? I mean, I know you guys clearly did a great job here, and I so often criticize. I want to make sure I commend. But is there a lesson here that we should take from this, and that you were able to have such a successful and massive reduction of the cost in the negotiation?
Well, I think the answer is on these types of complex procurements, you really need to look towards a negotiated procurement. You know, you can design certain projects with the best intent, but some of the complexity that goes into here really requires a back and forth and dialogue with the contractors and proposers to really understand where their risk lies, to be able to understand and enjoy a certain amount of flexibility. The extent to which we envision the project may be a little different in terms of the way the contracting environment views it, and we're able through a negotiated process to accommodate certain issues within a fair scheme and allow for us to really get to the best value in this particular arrangement.
Well, I think it's just terrific, so thank you to you and your staff. And it really has applicability to the broader capital plan, Mr. Chairman, because if we can demonstrate how we can negotiate costs down prudently, $100 million on this contract alone, that bespeaks well of our effort in the capital area.
Mr. Albert?
Because the Queens Boulevard line is so complex and has so many riders and has 4 lines with various service patterns, are you going to be coming back to us with a proposed GO strategy for the Queens Boulevard line? Peter, maybe?
We obviously have to fit in all the work going on in the system with all this. So we could certainly brief you separately on how the GOs would be impacted on this line. But it's clearly also coordinated with the work going on the 7 line, which is serving a similar market, and we don't want to be impacting both at the same time.
Yes.
And I think typical of large, complex projects like this, there'll be, we'll be informing the elected officials and we'll be informing the community groups. So, once that plan is all intact, we will do that. Yep.
The procurement package has been moved and seconded. All in favor? It passes. Next, we're on to service changes, and Peter Caffiero.
Thank you. We have one this month, which is we're informing the committee that we plan to hold a public hearing this fall regarding proposed station access changes at 2 stations in Brooklyn, 7th Avenue on the F and G lines and Borough Hall on the 4 and 5 lines. To improve customer convenience and to increase capacity at entrances at these 2 stations, we're proposing to reconfigure the fare control lines. While the reconfiguration will improve fare control capacity at both ends of the station's mezzanines, it will preclude free zone access across the mezzanines, thereby limiting customer access to a staffed station agent booth to only one side of the mezzanine. A diagram of the proposed changes can be found on pages 146 and 147 in your committee books. These access changes to staffed agent booths trigger a public hearing requirement and MTA Board approval on the final changes after the hearing under our service change procedures. Our purpose today is to notify the committee of the planned public hearings, which will occur in the fall. After the public hearing, we anticipate asking the committee for formal approval of the station configuration changes later in the year. The cost of the changes at Borough Hall will be approximately $300,000. The cost of the changes at the 7th Avenue station is about $400,000. These are one-time costs to reconfigure booths and turnstiles. $200,000 of the 7th Avenue cost will be paid for by a local city council member working with the community that requested the changes at that station and supports the project. This concludes the service change section of our agenda.
Mr. Albert, question.
So, Peter, as you know, the 7th Avenue station on the F and the G is cavernous and long and has a very long mezzanine, which you are proposing to close off. Part of the plan mentioned that you're going to change the high wheels at the 8th Avenue end and make regular turnstiles. Are you going to equip that area with CCTV? And who would be monitoring the CCTV to make sure there's not, widespread jumping of the turnstiles?
We will certainly work with NYPD on enforcement. We have a number of we've basically gone to system-wide unstaffed control areas with the standard turnstiles and have been monitoring that for fare evasion. We would continue to do that with these. We've not seen a noticeable increase in those versus ones that are staffed with booths.
So it won't be the existing booth agent, which is being moved to the 7th Avenue end, that would be monitoring that by camera. It would be off-site.
We'll get back to you on that.
Okay. Then I'll ask President Bianco if he has any other report or presentation. We don't vote on these.
In terms of special reports, there is the regular MetroCard program status report, which you can find in your books in Section 8, and that concludes the special reports.
Okay. For our final report, Dr. Hradnicenu and the capital construction report.
I would like to report on the continuous work at the 2nd Avenue subway. We have had a total of 10 contracts, and at this point we're 84, as of July 1st, we're 84% complete. We completed 5 contracts, 100%, and we have another 5 contracts that are, 4 of them are for the completion of the stations, and there are various levels of completion, anywhere between 50 to 90%, as well as the system contract is about 60% complete. At 96th Street station, the system and finishes work is about 71% complete, and we have, in effect, all surface work zones between 91st and 99th Street. This is on the street. They're being shifted to the west side, where by the end of December we expect to complete all our work regarding utilities. The contractor completed installation of facility power. That's a very important milestone for us. And we start testing the facility power equipment. We have also started to install, and we installed in June the escalators entrance 1, and installation of escalators of entrance 2 began in July. 86th Street station, that is the next station online, is the one that we are actually only 47% complete. This is a station, I remind you, that we started about 4 months or 5 months late due to some issues that we had to Buy America issue. And this particular station, again, the contractor, we are in discussion with the contractors to see to what extent they can accelerate their work, so we can actually make the December 2016 completion. The 72nd Street station is about 65% complete as of July. And one of the issues that we've had is the entrance of 301 East 69th Street that actually is moving forward nicely. We are 95% complete with the underpinning, and the work is moving along well. The other work in various ancillary locations, again, the work is being completed, and one can actually observe and see the buildings coming out of the ground. Some of them are already topped them. 63rd Street in Lexington, this is 90% complete as of July 1, and we have delivered escalators, and we started to the trusses are being installed. In fact, our art also is being installed at the 63rd and 3rd Avenue, where we're having 4 new entrances. The work has been, the majority of the work on the lower level platform has been completed, and we are scheduled to complete the upper level by the end of August. The track power signals work, what I would like to mention is that by the end of this month, 50% of all the rail will be installed. Everything has been delivered. We are now in the process of installing. One of the things that I would like to mention is that our Community Information Center, as of the end of June, we had 12,000 visitors, and the number of visitors increased dramatically after we put in a simulator. People going there can actually take a ride and drive the train between 96th Street and 72nd Street. And in fact, it is so popular that we decided to actually have a tournament as to who can drive the train safely and comfortably and the fastest possible way, and it will be done for 2 tiers in terms of age. Apparently, the children are many, and the parents are waiting there for a long time while they're looking at all our displays to accommodate the children. In addition to that, we have had an update with the Community Board Task Force on July 16th, and we are proceeding with all of the necessary design coordination, because we expect to start reconstructing the road and return it to its rightful owner, the residents and the management of New York City Department of Transportation. The next project I would like to talk about is the number 7 extension, and I'm pleased to actually announce that we expect to open the station by September 13. And there's nothing much more that I can report on that. I've been there on a number of occasions. Last time I was there was, in effect, last Thursday. And the work is basically pretty much complete, and we are actually running the last test and code compliance inspections. That concludes my report.
Are there any questions? There being none, that concludes our agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Second, all in favor? The meeting's adjourned. Thank you. And thank you, Carmen, and thank you, Fred.